Hey there, this is Gaurav. Welcome back with another video. So this is a part 2 on REST API. So I hope that from part 1 you got some idea about REST API, right? So in part 2, I'll show you practically how you can get data from weather API. I'll tell you about other constraint. So the agenda for today, you can get that from description below. And please watch part 1 before part 2 in order to get complete knowledge. So without wasting any further time, let's jump right in. So in part 1, I already talked about one constraint, that is uniform interface, right? Where from API endpoint you can easily understand what kind of action that we are going to perform, what kind of resource that we are going to talk about, and that has to be maintained uniformly in web services. So now let me show you the CRUD operation one by one with an example like how that can be performed using REST API. So let's talk about create. So here we have request, okay, and here response. So let's say I want to create or store some customer information from client to server. So in my request, the API endpoint should look like something like this, let's say, for Shopify application. Then what would be the HTTP method? Here the method would be post because we are creating, right? And also we need body, like what data we want to create or store in the server. And this is the data in JSON format that we are sending, like email, first name, last name, and so on. So after sending this request to server, we will get a response something like this. And this is the response data, let's say. So here we can observe one unique ID is created for this customer, and that is 123. So using this ID, we can fetch the information about the customer. So this request, this entire message in this request in REST, we can call it as self-descriptive message. Okay. So now let's talk about read. So let's say I want to read the customer details which I have created just now with ID 123. So my API endpoint should be something like this, right? At the end, I should have 123. What is the method? HTTP method would be get. We don't have to pass any body, okay? So the response that I will get from the server, it should be, let's say, like HTTP status code 200, that is okay, everything is fine. And this is the data, like this is the customer details we just have stored, right? So we are getting the details. So let's talk about update. So let's say I want to change the email ID for that customer which is having unique ID 123. So here my API endpoint would be something like this. So what would be my HTTP method? It would be put because we are updating. So we have to pass the new email ID, right? And that's what we can pass inside a body, like in the form of JSON. So the response that I'll get, let's say 200, everything is fine, like okay. And you can see we are getting the customer details of unique ID 123. But now the email ID has changed to the email ID that we have provided just now. Okay. Now let's talk about delete. Let's say I want to delete this customer having unique ID 123. So this is my API endpoint and my HTTP method would be delete. So the response I'll get, let's say 200, everything is fine. And a response, let's say message deleted successfully. So that is how we can basically perform all the CRUD operation using REST API. So this is just a simple overview that I have given to you. So here I'll show you how using REST API endpoint you can access, you can get some weather data for a particular location. Okay, just search for weather metadata API. After that, click on this meta weather API. So yeah, so you can see the structure that they are following. Yeah, so first we have protocol, then we have domain, and after that API. Okay, and then after that we have that resource path, right? So let's say I want to see some weather data in JSON format for a particular location. So I have to provide some resource path over here. So yeah, so you can see for London, I have to provide location, then 44418. This is the, let's say, ID for that London, a unique resource path. So if I click on it, then I should have weather data for London in JSON format, let's say. Yeah, here we go. So here you can see the ID, the maximum temperature, minimum temperature, wind speed, and all kind of data. So this is something that I want for my application. Okay, so this is raw data. So we can make use of it instead of putting or installing sensor or temperature sensor across a different region. So let's see a kind of HTTP response that we are getting. So let's inspect, let's reload it, then click on network, then click on this one. Let's go to header. So this is the actual API endpoint. Okay, you can see. So what is the request method? Here the method is get, because we are fetching data. Okay, what is the status code? It is successful, it is showing 200. So then we have remote address, then we have cross origin policy. So I'll create a video on this cross origin policy or CORDS. So the data, if you want to see in response, this is the data actually which we are getting from the server. Okay. So the next architectural constraint or style that we have in REST is stateless web services. So as far as REST architecture, a RESTful web service should not keep a client state on the server. So this restriction is called statelessness. So actually it means that the necessary state to handle the request should be contained within the request itself. So we should not store any state, any session state in server. So this is because right now we don't have a single server for a single application. Let's talk about Amazon. So for Amazon, thousands of servers are distributed around the world, right? So we don't know which request will go to the which server. So that is where we cannot store or cannot keep a session or client state on the server. So this is also because of container orchestration, where we are distributing multiple container in multiple server. All right. And this is why if you are creating a RESTful web service, then you should not keep client state on the server. So as an example, let's say if you're using JSON web token, then we don't have to, store session information for that client in the server. So this is a second architectural constraint for REST API. And the third architectural style or constraint is client and server. So what it says client application and server application must be able to evolve separately without having any dependency on each other. It means we can develop client and server independently. Okay, so that's what it is saying. Like client will only know about the resource URL, and that's all. And the fourth one is layered system. So REST allows you to use layered system architecture, where let's say you can deploy APIs on server 1. You can store data on server 2. You can authenticate requests in server 3. So this is how basically you can have layered architecture. Okay. And the fifth one is cacheable. So every response should include whether the response is cacheable or not. For how much duration response can be cached at client side. Okay. And client will return the data from its cache for any subsequent request, and there would be no need to send the request again to the server. Okay, so now let's look at the main question. So how can you be sure that you are building RESTful web services? Okay, so are you building a RESTful web services? Okay, so now if you are following all this constraint, like let's say uniform interface, stateless web services, client server, layered system, cacheable, so then you can say you are building RESTful web services, no matter what protocol you're using, HTTP, HTTPS, whatever. So RESTful web services are lightweight, maintainable, and scalable web services. So that's all in this video. So I have discussed a lot on REST API. So I hope you got some idea about REST API, like how it works and all. So now if you have any doubt, any queries in this video, please let me know by giving a comment in the comment section. So for more videos, you can follow my channel. So thanks for watching. For now, take care. Tata. Bye-bye.